Get out! You're not my daughter anymore. The one yelling with so much force that spit flies is my mother. Her face is beet red with anger, and she's holding a knife with both hands, the points directed at me. I can't support a leech who doesn't even contribute to the living expenses. Far from not contributing, I am actually putting in more than half of my income, which amounts to $3,000 every month, into our household. She knows this. I've explained it to her countless times, but it seems like nothing gets through to her now. There have been some times she wouldn't listen to anything out of anger, but I never expected she'd even bring a knife. For now, I just try to not provoke her further and quietly create some distance to avoid getting injured. I heard my mother's cold voice. If I knew you'd turn out to be such a parasite, I would have never had you. I'm Hannah, 29 years old. Thanks to my hard work, I now work as a software engineer at a well-known corporation. My decision to pursue this career was influenced by my dad. He's always loved tinkering with computers. He was fascinated with machines since he was a kid, and he was thrilled the first time he saw a computer. I was excited back then, but the latest computers are amazing. Look, this one is so thin yet the screen is so clear. He'd say with a smile. And he used to take me to electronics stores. He would show me the latest computer models, pointing out their features. Seeing my dad so happy working with computers sparked my own interest. Although he was usually quiet, he would teach me all about them when it came to computers. Eventually, I realized I was better at using computers than most people my age, and I wanted to learn more deeply, leading me to major in engineering in college. When job hunting, I chose a career related to computers without hesitation. I successfully landed a job as a software engineer at my current company. Most of my work is remote, and I've enjoyed it, managing to achieve a lot compared to my peers. The times I'd go home and talk about work with my dad were some of the best. Then, one day, my dad collapsed. I got a call from Mom and rushed to the hospital. Is Dad okay? He suddenly fell over, and I called an ambulance right away. They ran tests as soon as we arrived at the hospital and said it's subarachnoid hemorrhage. He needs urgent surgery, and he's in the operating room now. What are we going to do about our life from now on? Oh, Dad. I waited, praying for his safety. A few hours later, the doctor came to update us on my dad's condition. The surgery was successful, but there might be some lasting effects on his arms and legs. The most important thing was that he was alive. That gave me some peace of mind. My mom said beside me, "What about work? I wonder if he'll be able to work again. I'm worried. If we lose our income source, how am I supposed to live?" My mom was concerned about her own future. She's always been like this. She always thinks of herself first, before the family. Seeing her like this made me sad all over again. I visited a few times while my dad was hospitalized, and just as the doctor said, he seemed to have trouble moving his arms and legs. He's been working hard on his rehabilitation before discharge, but it was clear he would have some disabilities. During his stay, my mom would bring only the bare minimum necessities and leave quickly. Considering the commute to his job would be too much for him in his condition, and realizing he couldn't continue working, my dad had no choice but to resign. Since he would need care and couldn't live alone, I had discussed it with my mom. It's gonna be hard for Dad to live alone with his condition, so I hope you can help him out. But I wasn't really expecting an answer to begin with. I've got my hands full too, and I can't be bothered with taking care of him. Mom snapped back instantly. I was disheartened. Mom was never the type to put family first, even when I was little. She always put herself above everyone else. However, I believed she had some love for Dad and thought she'd reach out to help him now that he was in this condition. But she refused my request for care as well. Yeah, I get it. Then I'll just move back in and take care of Dad myself. That would really help me out. When can you start living here? Since my job was basically remote, I figured I could balance work and caregiving as long as I had a laptop and could conduct online meetings. I knew it'd be a tough life balancing work and caregiving, but for my beloved father, I decided to move back in with my parents. The day I moved back home, while packing up, Mom said to me, "For breakfast, make sure we can eat by 7 a.m. It'd be good to have eggs and salad, considering health. And keep the trash in small bags to avoid smells. Oh, and burnable trash goes out on Mondays and Thursdays, so make sure to take it out. And remember, cleaning is a daily task. I'm so glad you're back." Mom had said she'd take care of herself when I moved back, but suddenly, she started dumping all the housework on me. Yet, for all her demands, I noticed the house was a mess. It seemed she hadn't been doing much cleaning herself. As expected, I ended up doing all the chores while Mom did nothing. In fact, she was hardly ever home, living her life as she pleased. Now, not only was I working and caring for Dad, but I was also stuck with all the housework, making every day incredibly busy. My dad, who had lost a bit of weight, would apologize, saying, "I'm sorry for the trouble. You have work too," but I just smiled and shook my head. "Don't apologize. It's not your fault. I'm happy I came back home. I enjoy our talks." When I told him that, my dad seemed a bit relieved. Caring for Dad wasn't too hard since he wasn't bedridden or unable to eat by himself. It was more about lending a hand with daily activities, which wasn't as difficult as I feared, and I cherished spending a lot of time with him like when I was a child. Meanwhile, Mom, who did nothing, was always complaining. "Hannah, your cooking is kinda bland and simple. Don't you think Dad isn't getting enough nutrients? You're such an unfilial daughter." It irks me to see my mom quickly eating up my cooking while making comments. However, when Dad was brought into the conversation, even I had to take things seriously. Considering his age, he doesn't eat much, but I thought it might be easier for him to eat if I increased the number of small dishes rather than serving big platters of food, so I added more items, but Mom didn't say anything. Instead, a few days later, she said, "Lately, there's just too much food. Dad and I are old, we can't eat all this. Don't you know how to save money, even though you've been living on your own?" I couldn't help but retort when she said that, all the while finishing off her meal completely. "It was your idea to increase the number of dishes. I did it so Dad would have a variety and not get tired of the food." Then Mom visibly sighed and stood up from the table. "What's with that tone? It's like you're saying you only did it because I complained. How ungrateful. Unbelievable. It's because of your attitude, always taking things the wrong way, that you're still unmarried." Mom, clearly angry, stomped off towards the couch in front of the TV. She left the dishes on the table. She plopped down on the sofa roughly and just looked at me before shouting, "Coffee." While I was clearing the table, thinking who would even bother preparing it for her, she threw a cushion at me. "Hey, hurry up and make the coffee. You're almost always at home, not even working. You talk about taking care of Dad, but are you just after his pension? And yet you can't even manage the household properly? How ridiculous. We've been over this a million times. I've switched to working from home. When I'm in my room, I'm either in meetings or getting work done." No matter how I explained, Mom refused to understand the concept of working from home. In her eyes, I returned home under the guise of caregiving, without contributing financially, making me an unfilial child. I'm the one actually caring for Dad, yet she thinks I'm using his pension for myself. In reality, I'm the one taking care of Dad, earning for my parents' living expenses, and managing the household chores, all by myself. I've been put through Mom's whims since I was little, but I've reached my limit. I feel bad for Dad, but I can't live with the three of us under the same roof. A few days after making this decision, I accompanied Dad to his physiotherapy. He's motivated, and while dramatic improvements are unlikely, at least he's preventing any decline. As we returned home, promising to keep up the effort, I saw Mom leaving the house in a hurry with large bags. It's not unusual for her to be out or to come back from the department store with big bags, so I didn't think much of it. However, the next day, when I went to grab something from my closet, I realized all my bags and accessories were gone. "What? Why?" They weren't things I wore daily, nor had I moved them, so they should have been there. Then I remembered Mom's hurried departure the day before and confronted her. "Mom, were you in my room yesterday? What are you talking about all of a sudden? This is my house. I can go into any room I want." "Then what's with the bag?" Mom was holding a bag from a high-end brand. It was clearly something she bought that day. "You always tell me not to waste money, and yet you have the money to buy luxury items?" "Well, you're the one wasting money, so I decided to make sure you'd pay for it." Confused by her words, I frowned, and she started laughing cheerfully. "You had some pretty nice bags." Just the bags and accessories alone brought in a good amount of money. Unbelievably, Mom had sold my accessories without my permission to buy things for herself. I was furious and shouted, "What the heck, that's unbelievable. It's worse than theft, selling them without my permission. Pay me back." Then Mom's face twisted in rage. "How dare you talk back to your parents like that? In my time, we absolutely obeyed our parents. I worked and took care of them. I'm taking care of Dad, and you do nothing but complain." She slammed the table with all her might. "Why don't you help with Dad's care then? Do you remember ever helping since I got back? Who prepared his clothes? Who helped him stand up from his chair? You don't do any of that, yet you claim to be taking care of things. The one being taken care of the most in this house is you." I couldn't stand it and slammed my hand down on the table, staring at her. Mom had a rough relationship with Dad's mom. You could say she was pretty much bullied by her mother-in-law. I didn't have much to say about that, but I couldn't stand her claiming she was taking care of Dad. Dad had given up on receiving any real care from Mom a long time ago. Still, he tried to engage in small talk, bringing up TV shows or stories from friends he heard during physiotherapy. But as soon as Dad started talking, Mom would just disappear from the room. I wondered how she could claim to be taking care of him with such confidence without actually doing anything. While I was lost in thought, Mom kept silent. Then, slowly lifting her hands from the table without saying a word, she turned her back to me and walked into the kitchen. Just as I sighed, thinking she was just going to ignore the conversation, Mom came back way sooner than I expected. She was rushing towards me, holding a knife with both hands. "Mom?" Her face, pointed at me with the knife, was redder than I had ever seen it. Trembling with anger, she shouted louder than I've ever heard before. "Get out of this house. You're just a parasite living here for Dad's pension." At that moment, I realized none of my words had ever reached her. To Mom, no matter how much I took care of Dad or how much I worked, I was nothing but a pest. "I'll find a new place and move out as soon as I can," I said as I slowly backed away, putting some distance between us. Then, seeing that Mom didn't move, I ran to my room. I thought I wouldn't feel anything being rejected by Mom given our strained relationship, but tears wouldn't stop flowing from my eyes. It wasn't because I was sad. It was out of sheer anger. I immediately started to take action. From that day, I began preparing to move out. I talked to a colleague at work who knew someone in real estate, and they helped me find a new place. Whenever I had free time, I packed my belongings into boxes. Finding a new place didn't take as long as I thought it would. With the help of my colleague, I got everything ready and then talked to Dad. "Dad, can we talk for a sec?" "What's up?" I told Dad everything about how Mom had been treating me. "That's awful. I had a feeling about Mom's attitude, but, given my situation, felt it wasn't my place to say anything. I'm sorry. Dad, it's not your fault. Actually, I've been thinking. When I was well, she pretty much dumped all the housework on me, like I was some sort of maid. And she always asked for money. I was struggling, too." Dad continued. "Even now, when I need care, it's only you who looks after me. She never even tries to help you out. I'm truly disappointed in her attitude. That's why, actually, I'm considering getting a divorce." "That's tough, Dad. You've been going through a lot too." "Nah, compared to what you've been dealing with, my issues are nothing. Thanks a lot." "I'm grateful to you too." I was really happy to be able to come back home and spend time with you, Dad. It was a feeling from the bottom of my heart. I want to be with Dad. From now on. Dad, I have something to ask. Having understood Dad's feelings towards Mom, I had a plan in mind. I shared it with him. A few days later, we decided we'd move out while Mom was away. Every Wednesday, she'd head out in the morning to her yoga class, catch lunch with friends, and wouldn't be back until after 3 p.m. We made sure to schedule the movers for Wednesday morning when we knew for sure Mom wouldn't be around. They loaded up the truck with our stuff. As I sat in the rented car, feeling a bit sad that this was the last of this house. I wasn't alone. Dad was with me. We both wanted to get away from Mom, so we decided to move out and live just the two of us. In the car, Dad said, "Hannah, are you sure this was the right decision? This could have been a good opportunity for you to be freed from taking care of me." "Don't say that, Dad. I want to live with you. That's my greatest happiness. Let's keep going, just the two of us." "Thank you." By the afternoon, we had finished moving and were eating sandwiches we bought for lunch in our new place. "Sorry, we didn't have time for anything else today. It's nostalgic. I used to eat these a lot before you came back home. I never had time to cook because of work. Your mom always complained, though." Dad laughed at that memory. The sandwiches tasted especially good as we chatted about such simple things. While taking a break from unpacking, the phone rang. It was Mom. I answered it and put it on speaker so Dad could hear. "Yes? Why are you both suddenly gone?" You could tell from the phone she was freaking out. "Why are not only yours but also Dad's things gone?" "Dad and I decided to move out together, especially since you told me to leave." "Is there a problem? You won't have to worry about caregiving or living expenses anymore." "What about my life? I was relying on Dad's pension and retirement savings. Where are you now?" "Why don't you take care of yourself? We're at our new place now. Won't say where, but we bought a condo in a high-rise." "What?" "High-rise condos are for rich people. Don't joke with me, you can't afford that." Mom clearly didn't believe it, but it was true. We moved to a high-rise condo close to the hospital where Dad goes for his treatments. "I've told you many times, I'm still working. You used to mock it as just pocket money from a side job, but our company is quite big, and I've been there long enough to be trusted with significant responsibilities. You might not remember, but the $6,000 I've been depositing into the account each month since coming back was from me." "What? I thought that was Dad's pension. The account balance was from his retirement savings, right?" "Dad's salary was never that high, right? The retirement savings were gone the month after he received them. I saw the credit card statements. It was all spent on designer bags by you, wasn't it? That's why I've been supporting the household." "I didn't know. Nobody told me that." Realizing further explanation was pointless, I continued. "It's not that you weren't told, you just didn't want to listen. I've told you many times. Also, I heard from Dad. Despite him always being at home during his working years, you'd go out with friends every day. You managed the finances poorly, spending wildly, and then complained everywhere that he was too controlling. And now you're only worried about money? Hannah, knowing this, you deceived me. If you have that much money, come back home right now." To Mom, family was just a wallet. She didn't care about Dad's health, only about money. Despite all this, her management of the bank account was sloppy, and she thought it was fine to use the credit card however she wanted without any problems. It's baffling how she managed to get through life thinking like that. Dad, tired of the endless conversation, took over. "Even if you won't listen to me, I thought you might listen to Hannah, but I see that's not the case. Thanks for everything so far. I won't interfere with whatever life you choose to lead. Let's get a divorce." "Divorce? Wait, what about my life?" "You'll be free to live as you please without having to care for me. I'll send the divorce papers later, just sign them." She really couldn't think of anyone but herself. As I was lost in thought, Dad hung up the phone without another word. Sorry for putting you through that. I just replied, thank you, Dad. The next day, we were off to the hospital for Dad's appointment. I never imagined we could live somewhere so convenient. Thank you, Hannah. I just wanted to make sure it was easy for you to live, Dad. Plus, compared to downtown high-rises, the prices here are a lot more reasonable, so it looks like we can have a more comfortable life. We left the house with that conversation. It took us about 10 minutes to get to the hospital. As the automatic doors at the hospital's entrance opened, we both gasped. Mom was sitting in a chair near the entrance. It seemed she had been waiting for us since the morning. As soon as she saw us, Mom stood up energetically as if she had been waiting just for this moment and walked towards us. What was that call yesterday all about? I didn't hear anything about your salary or you and Dad moving out. I won't allow the two of you to live in a nice place without me. Suddenly, Mom's hand reached out towards me. She grabbed me and said, I'm going to live in the high-rise too. Even with her acting like this, I was beyond anger, just remaining calm. Why would she think this approach would get her what she wants? It became clear she hadn't thought about us as a family at all, and I found it pitiful. This was a decision Dad and I made together. Please give it up. I've decided I no longer consider you my mother. Thank you for everything. But from now on, let me live my life. I won't allow that. I don't need your permission. Now, let go of me. This is a hospital. If you keep this up, I'll call the police. Finally regaining some composure, Mom looked around for the first time. Other patients were glancing over at us. A hospital staff member, accompanied by a security guard, was walking towards us. In a panic, Mom let go of my hand. Is everything all right? Without looking at the person who asked, Mom hurried away. That was my mother, we had a little dispute. I said as I watched Mom's back disappearing through the hospital entrance. She seemed weaker than usual. For the next few days, Mom appeared to stake out the hospital and search the surroundings for us. But Mom only acted tough towards those she perceived as weaker than herself. After being escorted out by the security guard and yelled at by other patients calling her a suspicious person, she never showed up again. That day was the last time I saw my mother. Afterward, Dad consulted a lawyer to seriously pursue a divorce from Mom. Mom was reluctant about the divorce until the end, fussing and even saying she would demand alimony. But when the lawyer patiently explained that her position did not entitle her to alimony, she realized she couldn't get any. She tried to appeal to the lawyer's sympathy, claiming she couldn't live on her own, but the lawyer coolly referred her to municipal assistance and support centers and proceeded with the formalities. Eventually, a few months after the incident at the hospital, the divorce was finalized. Dad decided to sell our family home since he wouldn't be using it anymore. Mom was strongly against losing the house at the first time, but at the moment she learned she'd get money from the sale even after the divorce, she changed her attitude quickly. She wholeheartedly agreed, a sight so foreign it was hard to believe she was my mother. Dad and I sighed together, remarking on her greed until the very end. After selling the home, Dad and I have been enjoying a peaceful life. I kept busy with work, household chores, and caregiving, but the care services available in our new area are far more comprehensive than where our old home was, allowing me to hire a daytime helper and go into the office more frequently. Dad's condition has gradually worsened with age. And we've been troubled over the doctor's suggestion that he consider moving into a facility. Just when I was getting used to our new routine, I received a call from an unknown number. Thinking it was work-related, I answered only to hear Mom's voice. Hannah, I've almost run out of savings. Just a few months after receiving the money from the house sale, her savings were nearly depleted. So, give me some money, even a little. Think of it as your last act of filial piety. I have no money left to give you. Dad and I are living happily together. Please don't disturb us anymore. How dare you call me a disturber? To your own mother. After everything I've done for you, giving me some money should be nothing for you, Hannah. Why do you think you're working at a good company? Pay back your mother properly. Don't contact me again. Exhausted from arguing, I hung up. Later, I blocked her number, but she kept changing her number to call back. It seems she hadn't realized at first that I was blocking her, but then learned she could reach me by using different phones. Despite continuously blocking the new numbers, the cycle didn't stop. That continued until I changed my number, finally putting an end to her calls. Later, through a mutual acquaintance, Dad heard about Mom's situation. After her savings ran out, she lived in a rundown apartment on the outskirts and managed to get by with part-time jobs, having never worked before. Without any money for hobbies, she was just barely making ends meet on her own. Maybe she's finally learning to live like a person, Dad said. Perhaps I spoiled her too much. I whispered agreement and asked Dad, "Are you happy now?" Smiling at me, he said, "Of course, I am. Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate everything you've done."